Yeah, see, I'm a Gemini. I take shit to the heart, like when some like little fuck shit happen, like, and I had to get past that little stage in my life. Like, I can't hold grudges no more. Like, yeah, that one situation that showed me.
When you heard about the murder, how'd you feel?
I was crushed, cause it's like I could have saved him, like, you know, I could have like, cause I was like on the phone with him, like he called me, he was like, "Big cuz," that's my cousin, you know what I'm saying? He like, "Cuz, let me come to Daytona with you. I'm trying to come to Daytona." I was mad at him for a dumbass reason. Like, I straight told him, "No, bro, you can't come with me. Like, I don't fuck with you right now." Hung up on him. That night he died, so that shit fucked my head up. I'm like, damn, holding grudges with niggas like that shit ain't like that shit like crushed me, bro. You know what I'm saying?
What do you think happens, or believes happens, when someone passes away?
I believe you go to heaven, or you get reborn again. Something like that, something of that sort.
We spoke about religion in a previous segment when we were talking about your face tattoos. And you mentioned you are an Israelite.
Yeah.
In the event you do pass away, what do you want to be remembered for?
As a funny, good-hearted young man who loved his people, loyal to his people.
Now, I know this is a morbid discussion we're having about death right now, but my last question in regards to it, you do have life insurance, you mentioned that. So that's something you've financially prepared yourself in the event that takes place. But what about music-wise? Has there ever been a thought in regards to your music in the event you pass away?
I got songs on songs on songs on songs on videos, like, so I'm gonna be straight. I got drops, like they gonna, like my team gonna make sure I'm, like, you feel me? I'm gonna be set.
Is that something that's been talked about?
Nah, hell no. Yeah, nah, he died.
No, but you know, the reason why I ask is because there are rappers that have passed away before.
Yeah.
And their music comes out. Sometimes their music gets remixed.
Julio Foolio, born Charles Jones, entered the world on June 21st, 1998, in Jacksonville, Florida. From his earliest days, his life was steeped in the tensions and trials that marked many inner-city families living in underserved areas. Jacksonville's north side, particularly the areas Foolio would later call home, was not just where he lived, but where he would be tested, forged, and eventually discovered: Duval County. With its sun-drenched streets and constant undercurrent of gang tensions, offered few escapes for a young black boy with ambition. Music was one way out, but so were the streets. And like many young men of his generation, Foolio didn't get to choose a clear path. He had to survive both. Raised in a single-parent home, Charles was deeply influenced by his mother, who worked tirelessly to provide for him. She was the anchor of his chaotic world, keeping him grounded even as school systems failed him, and local violence circled closer to their doorstep. His father's presence, if any, was fleeting, leaving a gap that would later be filled with street mentor, some helpful, some destructive. Foolio's earliest memories were marked not by toys or cartoons, but by hearing sirens outside his window, seeing neighborhood friends lose their lives too early, and learning early that trust was rare. He wasn't the biggest or strongest, but he was sharpened in the streets. Being quick-witted could save your life. Music in the midst of mayhem, though violence was a constant backdrop, it wasn't the whole picture. Inside Julio's head, there was rhythm beats forming, bars rhyming. By the time he reached middle school, he'd started freestyling with friends, often rapping about things he saw with his own eyes: eviction notices, shootouts, mourning families. His lyrics didn't come from fantasy, they came from memory, inspired by Southern rap legends like Boosie Badass, Chief Keef, and Kodak Black. Foolio developed a style that was raw and often brutal in its honesty. While others fantasized about street life, he documented it. Even then, you could sense that this wasn't someone trying to entertain, it was someone trying to survive. He attended Ribaud High School, but he was eventually expelled due to fights and reported threats. School officials might have written him off as a troublemaker, but those who knew him personally described him as quiet, observant, and even sensitive when you caught him off guard. That duality soft-spoken in person, but vicious on the mic would become a signature tension in his later work. Foolio wasn't trying to play a character. He was trying to tell his truth. But truth, especially when born in violence, often comes with a price. Death as a constant companion tragedy struck early. In his teenage years, Foolio lost several close friends to gang violence. One of the most significant early losses was his cousin and close friend Bibby, real name Trevin Bullard, who was killed in 2017 in a high-profile shooting that rocked Jacksonville. Bibby's death hit Foolio like a freight train both emotionally and creatively. He would later memorialize him in several songs, the most notable being Bibby's Story. Rather than push Foolio away from music, the death of Bibby drove him deeper into it. Every beat became a form of therapy, and every verse was a letter to someone gone. Pain was no longer just something he felt, it was something he wielded. His lyrics started to gain traction in local circles, and eventually, regional buzz. He wasn't just rapping for fun anymore, he was building a name. But in Jacksonville's rap scene, fame often paints a target on your back. Surviving before thriving, long before national fame. Foolio had already been shot, arrested, and labeled a threat by law enforcement. But these weren't badges of honor to him. They were just chapters in a book he hadn't finished writing. In interviews, he often appeared torn between seeking revenge and trying to escape it all. It was clear from the beginning that Foolio saw rap not just as a creative outlet, but as a potential exit plan. He didn't want to be the next name on a memorial shirt. But surviving in Jacksonville, especially while rapping about the city's violent underbelly, wasn't a guarantee. It was a gamble. Foolio was deeply affiliated with a local street group known as KTA Kill Them All, which had a long-standing feud with Ackes as top killers, another group tied to rival rapper Young Guineas. This feud would later explode into national headlines, but even in its early days, it was deadly. Still, Foolio kept pushing forward with music, dropping local mixtapes and singles. Coming up, Crooks and Voodoo were early songs that resonated with listeners who felt similarly unseen or hunted. It wasn't pretty, but it was real-land for Foolio. Real was all he had to give. The name Foolio, the origin of his rap name Foolio, is as raw as the man himself. Though some speculated it was street-given, he once explained that it was simply a childhood nickname that stuck. Ironically, though the name suggests foolishness, Foolio's early moves showed he was anything but. He had a calculated strategy build, a loyal following by being brutally honest and unapologetically authentic. While other local rappers tried to craft party anthems or club bangers, Foolio leaned into storytelling. His early content wasn't designed to go viral, it was designed to resonate with people who'd lost brothers, dodged bullets, and made it to 18 with trauma that would take a lifetime to unpack. He knew his audience because he lived with them, and they knew he wasn't lying, foreshadowing the future even from the start. Foolio understood that fame could be a double-edged sword. As his local buzz turned into regional recognition, his circle tightened, and his lyrics became more pointed. He began posting more online on Instagram, on YouTube, sometimes flaunting his survival, sometimes warning about threats. In many ways, the writing was on the wall. Jacksonville's rap scene was evolving into a dangerous game of real life. Chess. Rappers were not only feuding in music, but also dying behind bars or behind gunfire. The ones who made it out either left the city, changed their tone, or beefed up security. Foolio, he doubled down. He wasn't interested in pretending. He wanted to be the narrator of a brutal reality that too many artists ignored or romanticized. That commitment to truth, however, would come at a cost. Asterisk, by the time Charles Jones, now known to the streets and the mic as Foolio, hit his mid-teens, his life had already diverged far from the average American high schooler. While some teens were studying for exams or prepping for football tryouts, Foolio was navigating a life where every day carried the possibility of betrayal, police encounters, or a bullet. He wasn't just growing up in Jacksonville, he was surviving. The north and west sides of Jacksonville, Florida, where he spent most of his formative years, were hotbeds of long-standing street conflicts. These weren't just turf wars, they were deeply rooted vendettas passed down from older generations. With gang ties becoming increasingly blurred with personal loss and retaliation, in the middle of this powder keg, Foolio became both a witness and a participant. It was a world where respect had to be demanded, not asked for. A world where slipping once could mean never getting up again. From affiliation to identification, KTA and the Jacksonville. David Foolio's gang affiliation wasn't a choice. It was a consequence of proximity, loyalty, and survival. Became associated with KTA, an abbreviation for Kill Them All. While many debate whether it was a formal gang or just a loose street collective, KTA had one thing in common. They were in opposition to a TK, a group linked to rival rapper Young and Ace. This was no ordinary rap beef. It was rooted in neighborhood violence, family members killed, and tit-for-tat shootings that had nothing to do with music. The lyrics were just a reflection of real-life bloodshed. To outsiders, it may have looked like petty rivalry. Foolio, it was personal. Friends had died. Threats were real. The division between KTA and ATK meant Foolio couldn't walk into certain areas of his own city without being hunted. The streets weren't a backdrop to his music. They were the narrative on. He was caught in the middle, the drive-by that nearly killed him in 2015. When Foolio was just 17 years old, he was shot. Multiple bullets hit him in the leg during a drive-by shooting. Survived, but the message was clear. Someone wanted him gone. It wasn't just the physical recovery that changed him. The shooting solidified Foolio's understanding of what it meant to live and rap in Jacksonville. He couldn't separate one from the other. If he wanted to make it in music, he had to be willing to bleed for it, and Foolio did. That incident added fuel to his determination. While others might have faded into silence, Foolio came back louder. His lyrics grew sharper, more pointed. He stopped rapping about hypothetical dangers and started rapping about real ones, by name, by street, by event. Music as a weapon. By the age of 18, Foolio wasn't just an underground rapper. He was a voice for his side of the city. Tracks like Crooks, Slide, and Bibby's Story painted vivid pictures of shootouts, betrayal, and loss. His videos, usually filmed in his own neighborhood or nearby trap houses, featured real people, not actors. His raps weren't metaphors, they were memoirs, and as his music gained traction, so did his notoriety. He was watched not just by fans, but by rivals and law enforcement. Interviews often opened with questions like, "Are you scared for your life?" Or, "Why don't you leave Jacksonville?" His answers were always the same. "This is my city. I was raised in this. I'm not running." But behind the bravado, the reality was setting in. Fame in Jacksonville could be a death sentence. And as his online views grew into the millions, so did the price on his head. Living under a target by 2018, Foolio had become a marked man. He couldn't go to public events without security. He stopped going to clubs unless he was performing. He rarely gave away his location in real time, even when traveling outside the city to Atlanta. Houston or Los Angeles, he kept his circle tight. Paranoia became second nature. But that's what happens when you're rapping about the truth. In a world where truth can get you killed, what made Foolio different from other up-and-coming rappers was that he refused to tone it down. He wasn't going to hide behind metaphor or industry politics. If a friend died, he said their name in a track. If a rival threatened him, he replied with a diss. To his critics, it was reckless. To his fans, it was bravery. Either way, it was Foolio. Legal trouble and police pressures with many street-affiliated rappers. Foolio's rise came with legal setbacks. Arrests for gun possession, violations of parole, and police harassment were routine. He often spoke about how law enforcement treated him more like a gang leader than an artist. In an infamous case, Foolio claimed he was arrested simply for filming a music video where guns were props. The police, however, didn't see it as art. They saw it as incitement. Despite this, Foolio kept dropping tracks. His fan base, especially young people from similar environments, connected with his transparency. To them, Foolio was living proof that you didn't need to sugarcoat your past to succeed. You could be messy, hurt, angry, and still have a voice. Trauma, death, and mental health. What's often missed in the coverage of Foolio's career is the emotional toll. The young man who appeared so cold on camera had lost dozens of friends before he turned 22. In interviews, you could see flashes of that, trauma-long pauses when talking about dead friends. Moments when his eyes welled up despite his attempts to play it cool. He once said in a vlog, "People think this rap shit is a game. I cry at night, bro. Every time I post a pic of Bibby, it's like reliving it all again. You don't just get over that." Despite projecting an image of invincibility, Foolio was deeply wounded, and he channeled that pain into songs like When I See You Remix, Dead Ops, and Bibby Flow. These weren't just diss tracks. They were cries for justice, closure, maybe even therapy. But therapy isn't common in Foolio's world. Retaliation is. And that cycle kept spinning. A turning point. By 2020, Foolio began showing signs of introspection. In between violent lyrics, there were flashes of self-awareness. Began speaking more about wanting to leave the streets, to elevate his music career beyond local beefs. He hinted at moving out of Jacksonville. He talked about financial investments, about helping his mom retire. But every step forward came with another step back. A new diss, a new funeral, new death threat. Jacksonville wasn't ready to let him go. Foolio wasn't ready to let it go either. Breaking through the noise, by the time Foolio turned 19, he transformed from a local street figure into one of Jacksonville's most polarizing young rappers. He was no longer just speaking to Duval County. His voice had started to echo across Florida and beyond, thanks to the raw, unfiltered energy of his lyrics and the authenticity that couldn't be faked. In 2018, Foolio dropped Crooks, a track that would begin pushing him out of the underground circuit. Its chorus was aggressive, its verses brutally specific, and the accompanying visuals offered a window into his neighborhood reality, one filled with Glocks, gang signs, and grim loyalty. It wasn't meant to entertain suburban kids. It was for the trenches. And it hit. Crooks became a street anthem not because it was polished, but because it was real. The song also sparked buzz on YouTube and SoundCloud, especially among fans of drill and trap music, looking for authenticity. Jacksonville, often overshadowed by Miami and Atlanta in the southern rap conversation, suddenly had a voice of its own. And Foolio was leading that charge, going viral and paying for it. Foolio's rise didn't follow the traditional industry path. He didn't come through polished label showcases or major cosigns. He went viral off violence. In 2019, Foolio released Bibby Story, a heartfelt but raw tribute to his late cousin and friend Bibby. The song, set over a haunting instrumental, detailed the circumstances of Bibby's murder in Jacksonville, quickly caught fire online, especially among young fans drawn to real stories and pun-infused lyrics. But with the praise came threats. In Jacksonville, saying someone's name in a song could start a war, deepen one. And when Foolio dropped Voodoo, Slide, and other diss-heavy tracks referencing rival gangs, the city's tension escalated. What made his music dangerous wasn't just the lyrics, it was how detailed they were. Names, dates, places. It was the kind of rap that didn't just make listeners nod, made them pick sides, and picking sides in Jacksonville could get you killed. Who I Smoke, a viral explosion in 2021. Everything changed with one song, not by Foolio, but by his rivals, Ad members Young and Ace, Spina Bince, Wappa Wit, Da, Choppa, and Fast Money Goon released the now infamous track, Who I Smoke, set ironically to the instrumental of Vanessa Carlton's 1,000 Miles. The song's upbeat melody was paired with savage lyrics mocking deceased KTA members, including Bibby. It was a diss track so bold, so disrespectful, and so unexpected in its sound that it exploded on YouTube and TikTok, amassing millions of views in weeks. The mainstream media caught wind. New York Times, Complex, Genius, and other outlets began dissecting the beef, calling it the most dangerous rap feud in America. Foolio, now thrust into the spotlight without even dropping a track, responded with calculated fury. Foolio's response, When I See You Remix Foolio answered, "Who I smoke with a remix of Fantasia's ballad, When I See You," transforming it into one of the most menacing and emotionally conflicted diss tracks of the decade. In it, he didn't just diss Ace and his crew, he mentioned the names of their dead friends, locations of murders, and even showed photos from crime scenes. The video quickly racked up millions of views, shocking casual rap fans and cementing Foolio's place in a deadly game of lyrical warfare. The track wasn't just a clapback, it was a warning. I'm not afraid to go further than you. The line between music and murder blurred even more. Law enforcement started monitoring YouTube uploads. Commentators debated the ethics of these diss songs, but Foolio kept climbing. He leaned into the storm, rather than hiding from it. Stardom at a steep price by 2021. Foolio had over 500K subscribers on YouTube and multiple songs passing 5 million views. He was headlining shows in Atlanta and Houston, signed brand partnerships, and talked in interviews about investing in real estate, helping his mother retire and turning pain into profit. But despite his growing success, Foolio couldn't escape the chaos. In July 2021, he was shot again, this time while leaving a recording studio. Reports said he was targeted in a drive-by shooting that left his vehicle riddled with over 100 bullets. Miraculously, he survived. Instead of going silent, Foolio posted photos of himself in the hospital, middle finger raised, captioned, "I'm good." Jaw missed. His fans praised him. His enemies got angrier. Each shooting added layers to his mythos. But each bullet also shortened the distance between survival and tragedy. Foolio versus the industry. Though his name was blowing up, Foolio had a complicated relationship with the mainstream rap industry. He didn't trust labels, he claimed. Executives wanted him to water down his message. And when he sat down for interviews, he often looked guarded, like someone who'd been burned before. He was open about industry pressure to leave the beef alone. But to Foolio, that wasn't an option. His beefs weren't fabricated for clout. They were consequences of death and betrayal. He couldn't stop talking about it because it was all he lived with. In one interview, he said, "These labels don't care if you die, bruh. They just want your views. I rap because I got to tell my story, not because I want to be famous." This refusal to conform kept Foolio in a unique place, loved by fans for his rawness, feared by rivals for his truth, and distrusted by institutions. For the very same reasons, visual storytelling, his YouTube empire beyond music, Foolio understood the power of visuals. His YouTube channel became a key part of his brand, not just for music videos, but for vlogs, interviews, and live streams, where he aired grievances and interacted with fans. The videos felt personal. Fans felt like they knew him. He shared moments with his family, tributes to fallen friends, behind the scenes clips of music video shoots, and real-time reactions to threats or diss tracks. Foolio turned his trauma into content, filtered and often controversial. And in an era where fans craved realness, he gave them more than most artists dared: loyalty, paranoia, and isolation. As Foolio's star rose, so did his sense of isolation. Many of his closest friends were dead. The ones still alive were often either in jail or under investigation. He rarely showed who he was with, and when he did, fans could sense the caution in his voice. Loyalty was everything too. Foolio, but betrayal was always one misstep away. He became more vocal about mental health, though never in the traditional way. He didn't post about therapy or healing. Instead, he poured it into songs, explosive, emotional, and often filled with contradictions. Some tracks showed deep remorse. Others were ice cold, but the message was consistent. This life takes a toll, and Foolio was feeling every ounce of it. Asterisk walking the razor's edge by 2021. Foolio had done something many thought impossible. He brought Jacksonville's underground rap war to the national stage and lived a rap about it. His diss tracks weren't just trending among street circles anymore. They were being dissected in YouTube reactions, mainstream hip-hop blogs, and even law enforcement briefings. But with recognition came pressure from the public, from rivals, and from the system itself. Foolio's career was now inseparable from his controversies. His fame grew directly proportional to the danger he carried. The more he dropped music, the more retaliation brewed in the streets. Every post, every lyric, every video felt like a provocation, and Foolio knew it. This rap asterisk T saved me. He once said in an interview, but it also put a bigger target on my back. He wasn't exaggerating. The streets don't love nobody, despite becoming a household name in the southern drill scene. Foolio's personal life remained a minefield. Couldn't do what most rappers his age were doing, partying, going live at clubs, showing off lavish homes. Every public move had to be calculated. He wasn't just beefing with one person or group. He had become a lightning rod in one of the most violent, ongoing rap feuds in the country. In 2021, he narrowly survived another ambush. His car was shot over 100 times while he was leaving a recording session in Jacksonville. Miraculously, he wasn't hit. The footage of his bullet-riddled vehicle circulated across social media within hours. Foolio, in typical fashion, posted a video response with the caption, "Y'all missed again. Try harder." To fans, this was bravery. To the streets, it was provocation. To police, it was evidence. His online presence became part of an investigation matrix. Jacksonville Sheriff's Office began tracking rapper-related shootings and using lyrics and Instagram stories as part of their case building. The line between art and confession was now dangerously blurred. Media obsession, the mainstream media couldn't ignore him anymore. Foolio became the face of a disturbing new genre of coverage: death, drill, diss rap, murder music. Outlets like Complex, Genius, Vice, and even Fox News ran features about him and the broader ATK versus KTA feud. Most covered it. Like a true crime docuseries, some praised his raw honesty. Others criticized him for glorifying death and violence. Foolio, for his part, was aware. In interviews, he often toggled between defiance and fatigue. They want me to rap about butterflies? I lost 20 friends before I was 22. This is what healing sounds like for me. He wasn't wrong. Critics could condemn him, but they couldn't erase the environment that shaped him. Foolio wasn't inventing these stories. He was reacting to them and turning them into art, even if the art itself deepened the danger. Cold lyrics, hot takes in 2022, Foolio doubled down. Songs like Dead Ops, Free Smoke, and When I See You PT. 2 pushed the limits of lyrical warfare. He referenced autopsy reports, mocked candlelight vigils, and challenged his enemies to respond. Fans ate it up. The views climbed into the tens of millions. Clips trended on TikTok. His name became a meme, a warning, a badge of honor all at once. But not everyone was laughing. Families of deceased victims, some mentioned by name in his songs, publicly criticized Foolio for disrespecting the dead. In a heated interview with DJ Vlad, Foolio was asked, "Do you think you're going too far with the Dead Op references?" The answer was chillingly simple. They did it first. To Foolio, this culture wasn't something he invented. It was something he inherited and evolved. The only rule was, say what you want, but be ready to face the consequences. Law enforcement and legal troubles, Foolio's songs grew more violent. So did the police scrutiny. Jacksonville law enforcement started cracking down on gang-affiliated rap artists. Lyrics were reviewed in investigations. Videos were used as visual evidence of gang activity. Foolio often found himself pulled over, searched, detained, or followed. At one point, he posted a video of police tailing him while shouting, "They want to see me dead or in jail. But I ain't folding." He wasn't exaggerating. In 2023, Foolio was detained during a traffic stop involving firearm suspicion, though later released. Multiple times, he claimed his music was being unfairly targeted, while other genres promoting violence were left unchecked. "They don't pull country singers for talking about guns," he said in one IG rant. But let me mention a Draco, and suddenly it's terrorism. This paranoia wasn't just show. Foolio truly believed he was being hunted by rivals, by law enforcement, and even sometimes by his own fans, cementing his legacy in Florida, rapped despite the controversy. Foolio's position in the Southern rap hierarchy was solidified. Alongside contemporaries like Young Ace, Sputum Got 'Em, and Hot Boy. He became one of Florida's defining voices. But what made him different was his refusal to chase mainstream approval. While others pivoted to safer content or pop features, Foolio stayed rooted in Jacksonville's war-torn reality. He spoke for the voiceless, for those buried before 25, for mothers without justice. For kids who lost hope at 13, he turned trauma into legacy. Even if that legacy was volatile, attempts to shift the narrative by late 2023, Foolio began showing signs of evolution. He released tracks like Confession and Pain Story, where he rapped about depression, paranoia, PTSD, and survivor's guilt. The production was darker, the tone more introspective. He even did an Instagram Live talking about possibly leaving Jacksonville for good. "I done did enough damage. Maybe it's time to grow," he said to over 100,000 viewers. For the first time, it seemed like Foolio was considering life beyond beef. He talked about moving to Atlanta, about investing in music studios, and mentoring kids on staying out of the streets. But the war was never far away, still a target even as he attempted to pivot. The streets didn't forget. Disrespect lasts forever in Jacksonville. The feud with ATK never truly died, it only paused between funerals. Foolio was increasingly cautious. He stopped posting real-time locations. He traveled with heavy security, and he often said in interviews that he trusted no one. "A lot of dudes that smiled with me were plotting on me," he once said. "This game don't love you back. The streets damn sure don't." He knew what the future held if things didn't change, but change in his world came slow, and sometimes too late. Asterisk the weight of loss for Julio Foolio. Loss wasn't just a chapter of life, it was the entire book. By his mid-20s, Foolio had lost more friends than many lose in a lifetime. Most of them didn't die from disease or accident. They were murdered, shot in cold blood. Sometimes during shootouts, sometimes ambushed, sometimes while sleeping. And the tragedy wasn't just personal, it was public. Because each time a friend died, it wasn't only a loss in the real world, it was a firestorm online. Fans demanded tribute tracks. Enemies mocked the dead. Blogs debated who would retaliate next. The internet didn't mourn, it monetized. But Foolio grieved differently. Not with silence, with sound. Making music out of mourning, many of Foolio's most famous songs were dedicated to fallen friends and family. His 2020 track, Bibby Story, was a gut-wrenching account of his cousin Trevin Bullard's murder, better known as Bibby, who was gunned down at 16 outside an apartment complex. In that track, Foolio didn't just talk about the murder. He painted the scene, described the pain of hearing the news, and how the streets celebrated Bibby's death with memes and diss tracks. "They laughed when my brother died. I cried when theirs did," he once posted. "But I never stopped rapping. Because somebody got to speak for Bibby." Bibby wasn't the only one. Tracks like List of Dead Ops, Voodoo, and Slide for Bibby became ongoing chronicles of Jacksonville's underground war. And while critics accused him of fanning the flames, Foolio insisted he was simply documenting pain the world didn't want to see. Loyalty over life. Foolio didn't just rap about his dead friends, he lived by them. His loyalty to KTA wasn't just musical, it was blood deep. He wore shirts with Bibby's face, shouted out fallen homies in every interview, and often threatened to slide for those who didn't make it. That loyalty, however, came with a cost. It locked him into an eternal feud that made peace nearly impossible. Even when he wanted to grow as an artist, the code of loyalty pulled him back into the trenches. In one interview, when asked why he didn't just leave the beef behind, he answered, "I can't drop the war until they stop disrespecting the dead. This ain't rap. This is justice." The cycle was brutal. A friend died, Foolio made a song. The rival side responded. More blood spilled, and on it went. The mental toll despite the brashness in his lyrics and the fearlessness in his videos. Foolio was haunted by trauma. He often spoke about paranoia, trusted almost no one. He moved cities without warning, kept multiple phones, and once revealed he hadn't slept in his own home for weeks because he feared it was being watched. On Instagram Live, he once said, "Every time I hear a door creak, I grab my Glock. That's not music paranoia. That's real trauma. He also alluded to depression rarely directly, but it surfaced in moments of honesty. I laugh in videos but cry in silence. You ever lose 10 people and still smile? That's me. Fans would sometimes flood his comment sections with stay safe messages. He replied with skull emojis. Losing the innocents, perhaps the hardest losses, were those of friends who weren't even in the spotlight, not gang members, not fellow rappers, just people caught in the crossfire. In 2022, Foolio posted about a young cousin killed during a drive-by. The child wasn't the target, just another name. On a long list of collateral damage in Jacksonville's brutal beef, the post read, "She was 7. Ain't never held a gun. Ain't never dissed nobody. Just walked outside at the wrong time." Post went viral not because it was shocking, but because it reminded fans that the real cost of war wasn't always the rappers. The families. The kids. It was the people who never got to grow up and rap about it. Public mourning. Private pain. One of Foolio's unique traits was how he mourned publicly. When a friend died, he often went live. He showed himself crying, praying, holding the shirt of the deceased, or even filming the funeral. Some criticized him for clout chasing. Others said it was therapeutic. But to Foolio, there was no line between public and private. His whole life was on display, and so was his grief. "I'm not doing this for views," he once posted. "I do this because this is my only way to not go crazy." But beneath the tears was a growing emptiness. No amount of songs could bring them back. And with each passing year, Foolio began to talk more like someone expecting to join them. Loyalty that kills. The darker side of loyalty is how it traps you. Foolio knew that as long as he stayed loyal to his crew, he would remain in the line of fire. The beef couldn't end unless someone made peace, and in Foolio's world, peace often meant weakness. He watched other rappers move out, rebrand, change names, or sign to major labels. He stayed in Jacksonville. He kept KTA in his bios. He still pulled up to the same blocks. In a 2023 vlog, he said, "I made it out the mud, but I ain't above it, because the mud is where they buried all my brothers." Loyalty wasn't optional. It was the foundation of his identity. But it was also his prison, building a legacy through loss despite the chaos. Foolio did try to build something lasting. He helped produce and promote younger artists from Jacksonville, giving them a platform. He donated to funerals. He paid legal fees for locked-up friends. He began talking more about leaving something behind. In 2022, he dropped an EP titled "Love Me While I'm Here." The title said it all. It was a warning to fans, friends, and the world. Don't wait till I die to say I was real. Say it now. The EP featured more introspective songs, fewer diss bars, more pain. It didn't go viral like his beef tracks. But for those who listened, it felt like the real Foolio. A young man drowning in trauma, still trying to give others a way out. Beyond the bars, a voice of his generation. As the years progressed, it became clear that Julio Foolio wasn't just another street rapper. He had become the voice of an environment, a generation, and a city locked in a never-ending loop of violence, survival, and retaliation. His music wasn't about fantasy. It wasn't aspirational. It was documentary. That's why it mattered. By 2022, Foolio's name wasn't just trending among rap circles. It was being studied in criminal justice programs, debated in hip-hop think pieces, and streamed in millions across platforms. For many, he symbolized the brutal cost of authenticity. For others, he was a cautionary tale. But for those who grew up in neighborhoods like Jacksonville's North Side, Foolio was realer than anyone they'd ever seen on TV. The power of social media. Few underground rappers wielded social media as effectively or as dangerously as Foolio'd Instagram lives. YouTube reaction videos and Twitter rants became part of his branding. He would go live after surviving shootings. He would drop diss videos with timestamps and GPS data blurred. His transparency wasn't just bold, it was weaponized. He understood the digital world. He used it as both shield and sword. But with virality came visibility. Law enforcement began surveilling Foolio's online presence, often treating his lyrics and live streams as digital confessions. Some of his enemies used his posts to track him. Others tried to bait him into responding online so they could catch him lacking in real life. Still, Foolio refused to disappear from public view. If I go ghost, they think I'm scared. If I post, they think I'm stupid. Either way, they're watching, so I might as well be me. That duality, self-aware but unafraid, became part of what made him magnetic. Business moves in the background, although known for war tracks and beef. Foolio was far from reckless in business. He independently monetized his music via YouTube, Apple Music, and Spotify, earning hundreds of thousands from streaming royalties. He licensed content, negotiated show appearances with strict security, sold Foolio-branded merchandise. He also toyed with launching his own label imprint. In 2023, he teased a group project featuring other Jacksonville artists, many of whom had little industry access until he gave them a cosign. I came up with no handouts. Oh, so I'm giving the next one something to stand on. He said in a behind-the-scenes vlog. There were also reports that he was investing in real estate, mentioned in interviews that he wanted to buy houses for his family, get them out of the neighborhood before the neighborhood took them. He even started referring to himself, not just as a rapper, but as a brand. Trying to shift the message, it's easy to see Foolio as locked into the street mentality, but he showed glimmers of trying to grow in 2023. He released tracks like Trauma, Confessions, and Letter to Myself. These weren't just introspective, they were admissions of vulnerability. He talked about fearing for his life, about missing his dead friends, and about how fame had become a curse more than a blessing. He also began speaking more openly about his desire to inspire kids. I don't want nobody to be like me. I want them to learn from me, he said in a rare long-form interview. If I gotta die to show the next dude what not to do, maybe that's my role. He had even started discussions with local nonprofits in Jacksonville about launching anti-violence campaigns aimed at youth, though many of those projects were still in early talks. His heart was changing, but the streets weren't. Still, trapped in the cycle, despite moments of growth, Foolio couldn't fully shed his past. Each time he dropped a softer track, someone from the other side would bait him. Each time he posted a positive message, his own fans would demand a disresponse. His identity had become a paradox. He was the survivor people looked up to, but also the provocateur they expected chaos from, even when he tried to walk away. From beef, death found him. In late 2023, another affiliate of his crew was killed in a retaliation hit. Foolio went silent for days. Then he returned with a video post saying, I try to change, but God ain't changing this city, so I gotta move like it's still war. His fan base was split. Some encouraged his evolution. Others demanded more dead ops content. And so, the cycle continued. Protection or paranoia, security, became a dominant theme in Foolio's later years. He traveled with armed guards, refused to perform at venues without vetted security, and often changed Airbnbs mid-trip to avoid being tracked. He was seen with bulletproof vests even at informal gatherings, but for Foolio, this wasn't extra. It was essential. You don't see the people who want me dead. I do, he told a blogger. Paranoia? Nah, that's awareness. Despite the armor, he carried an emotional weight that even guns couldn't guard. He began referencing spiritual things in interviews, karma, energy, legacy. He wasn't trying to escape the consequences anymore. He was trying to leave behind meaning, his influence on Florida rap culture. It's impossible to talk about Florida's modern rap landscape without mentioning Foolio. He inspired a wave of young, unfiltered street rappers. He showed that you didn't need label backing to make an impact. He opened the door for unpolished, emotionally raw storytelling, and repanned, even set a template for viral diss culture. Of course, that legacy is controversial. Many blame Foolio and his rivals for death-based rap, a genre obsessed with naming victims and glorifying revenge. Others argue he was simply mirroring the violence America forgot. But in any case, his influence is undeniable. Building something bigger in 2024, Foolio teased a new direction. He posted that his next album would focus on healing, not hurt. He claimed he wanted to include features from more mainstream artists and even hinted at collaborations with mental health advocates and activists. This one for the kids who's still alive. The ones who still got time to change, he wrote. There were even rumors of a Foolio documentary being pitched to Netflix. A team had reportedly started following him for months, filming his asterisk recording sessions, meets with community groups, and the behind-the-scenes of surviving stardom in a war zone. It seemed like Foolio might finally be stepping out of the cycle. Not by running, but by rewriting the ending. Asterisk the final countdown by mid-2024. Charles Jones, known to the world as Julio Foolio, was riding a dangerous balance between reflection and retaliation. He had grown more conscious of his influence, more outspoken about breaking cycles of violence, and yet, still unable to fully escape them. The pressure of fame, enemies, fans, expectations, trauma, and law enforcement scrutiny converged like storm clouds, began dropping fewer diss tracks and more introspective music. He went quiet online for stretches, then came back with fire when provoked. Despite his efforts to move more cautiously, Foolio's name remained active in the Jacksonville streets. Old feuds hadn't died. They had simply simmered. And Foolio had too many ghosts to walk away clean. Still, to those close to him, something felt different. He was planning a move to Atlanta quietly. He was lining up a distribution deal. He'd recently shared clips of unreleased tracks that sounded nothing like his usual arsenal. These weren't war cries. They were confessions. It was like he knew the time was short, and it was. The birthday weekend on June 23, 2024, Foolio turned to 6. He traveled to Tampa, Florida. Celebrate quietly, nothing extravagant. Just some friends, a rented Airbnb, and a few posts to his fans. That weekend, shared Instagram stories showing him vibing in the pool, flashing smiles, holding up 2 fingers for peace, not pistols. It was one of the few times fans saw him relaxed. But on June 24th, the unthinkable happened. He was ambushed outside a Holiday Inn hotel parking lot around 4:40 a.m. Reports said more than one shooter opened fire. Over a dozen rounds were let off. Foolio was hit multiple times. Emergency services arrived quickly. But it was too late. Julio Foolio was pronounced dead at the scene. The shockwave news of Foolio's death sent an earthquake through the hip-hop community within hours. Social media erupted. Fans, fellow artists, and media outlets began posting tributes, reactions, and speculation. Hashtags like #RipFoolIO, #JusticeForFoolIO, and #DuvalLegend trended for days. His enemies posted vague remarks, some mocking, others ominously silent. His mother released a short statement through her legal team asking for privacy. KTA affiliates posted broken heart emojis, candlelight videos, and long monologues about sliding back or finishing the war. But perhaps the most devastating reaction came from his fans, not just because they lost an artist, but because they felt they lost someone they grew up with, someone who never pretended to be perfect, someone who wore his trauma like a badge and turned it into bars. The unreleased vaultine the weeks that followed. Foolio's team confirmed that he had left behind a vault of unreleased music, some of it mixed and mastered, others still in demo form. There were also vlogs, journal-like recordings, and voice notes. One such note was posted by a close collaborator. In it, Foolio said, "If I don't make it, just tell him I tried. I ain't perfect, but I ain't fake either. I stood on business. I loved who I could, and I rapped what was real." The clip went viral. Fans turned it into a mantra. I tried. I rapped what was real. Posthumous project in August 2024. Foolio's estate released a posthumous EP titled Still Standing in Spirit. It featured 5 tracks, each one a departure from his usual aggression. The standout song, Mama said, is a letter to his mother apologizing for all the times he put her through fear. Another track, Legacy, ends with an eerie voice. Memo, Foolio talking about death. Not as an end, but a transition. Critics praised the project as his most emotionally mature work to date. Fans called it his healing tape. But perhaps the most important thing about the EP was that it showed Foolio was evolving. He never got the chance to finish. Funeral and memorial. Foolio's funeral was held in Jacksonville under tight security. Only select family and friends were allowed to attend, though hundreds stood outside the gates. Holding signs and playing his music aloud from their cars, a makeshift shrine was built on the street where he used to film his earliest music videos, covered with candles, posters, Foolio t-shirts, and photos of Bibi KTA and other lost souls. It wasn't just a memorial. It was a battlefield's eulogy. In the months following his death, murals were painted in Jacksonville, Tampa, and even Atlanta. One mural read, "He spoke for the voiceless. Rest in rhythm." The cultural debate, Foolio's death, reignited a national conversation. Should diss tracks be allowed to name real victims? Are police using music to target black youth unfairly? Is the rap industry complicit in creating stars they know will die young? A product of his environment. Others labeled him as a symbol of self-destruction, but the truth, as always, was more complex. Foolio never claimed to be a saint. He knew what he was doing. But he also knew that he was raised in a war that didn't give him many choices. He didn't glamorize trauma, he revealed it, whether the world was ready to hear it or not. His final message in one of his last interviews.
Oh.
Just months before his death, Foolio left the world with this: "I ain't gonna live to see 40. I know that. But if you hear my music, if you really hear it, you'll know I ain't never lied, not once." That quote now sits engraved on a memorial plaque placed by his fans. It is not the quote of a man defeated. It's the quote of a man who turned survival into story, pain into poetry, and loss into legacy. Julio Foolio's legacy to the streets: he was the last one standing. A brother, a soldier, a product of war who never faked peace. His fans: he was brutally honest, tragically poetic, and relatable in a way no mainstream artist could replicate. To critics, he was the question that hip-hop still hasn't answered: can truth exist without tragedy? Foolio didn't die a superstar. He died something rarer, a symbol of raw reality, martyr of his own truth. And in a world full of filters and facades, Foolio's unfiltered truth still echoes.